So, a hugely controversial end to the match in Paris.
Livramento penalised for handball, and here are the considerations made by the officials for a handball decision. Firstly, officials need to determine whether the player has deliberately handled the ball. The official then needs to consider the proximity of the player from the ball and the speed at which it hits them on the arm or hand. And the final consideration is whether the arm or hand is in a, quote, an unnatural position. For example, away from the body. In this case, it seems the officials have penalised Livramento for that final point.
But in April, the UEFA Football Board, an independent advisory group, recommended this, that, and I quote, UEFA should clarify that no handball offence should be called on a player if the ball is previously deflected from his own body.
This guidance clearly wasn't applied last night as the ball hits Livramento's chest first, then his arm.
In my opinion, it wasn't the right decision. So many things to take into account in that moment. I think the speed first. I mean, it's a ricochet that, when it's slowed down, looks totally different to the live event. Ball hits his chest first, then comes up, hits his hand. But I don't think his hand's in an unnatural position. I think they're down by his side. He's running, sort of in a running motion. I feel it's a poor decision. I think it was hugely frustrating for us because in that moment you know how little time there is left in the game, but nothing we can...
In my opinion, obviously not a penalty. It's something that obviously hits his body first and then kind of his elbow, really close proximity. I just don't see how that's a penalty. I played football a long time, watched a lot of games. I think if that's a penalty we're given nowadays, I think it's bad for the game of football.
Yeah, I mean, do you even know what the rules are with those deflection up onto the arms like that, or do you just have to go with it?
I mean, I'm sure the guidelines are if it hits your body and then your arm, it's obviously not a penalty really. Yeah. But obviously, I'm sure them guidelines will be being checked tonight.
It's a disgusting decision.
Give it.
It's ridiculous. It is a ridiculous decision. It's impossible.
What a joke.
Tim calls it disgusting, and you can hear from all 5 members of our panel all agreeing.
It's rubbish.
It comes off the body, but yes, it comes off his body, but his arm is in a natural position for the move that he's making. That's a ridiculous decision. That's ridiculous.
It's come off his chest. He can't move his hand off his body. How can you move your arm when it comes off your body?
What they look at is whether your arm's in an unnatural position for the move that you're making. It isn't. He's just running back. The ball cannons off his chest.
That's up there with the worst I've seen.
That's bad.
For more on this, we can cross live to our reporter, Keith Downey, who was there in Paris last night, still there in Paris. Morning, Keith. So Eddie Howe clearly felt aggrieved by the decision. Yeah. A night of frustration for Newcastle, wasn't it?
Yeah, the word frustration was used by Eddie Howe, but I think he was feeling a little bit stronger than that last night. I'm back here at the Parc des Princes, as you say, what the Newcastle United supporters are calling the scene of the crime last night. You know, what a horrendous way for the match to end for them. They were on the brink of one of the most famous results in their European history, a result which would have put their destiny in their own hands with regards to qualifying for the knockout stages of the competition. And, you know, just listening to Nick Pope there, you could hear the desperation in his voice. He'd been so good throughout that match. Newcastle had put everything into it. Remember, this is a Newcastle squad right now who are going through an injury crisis, and they asked 11 players to take to the field and leave the field last night. Not one substitute was used because Newcastle didn't have really any options, or certainly any attacking options off the bench, and the players really dug in for Eddie Howe last night. Really interesting to hear Tom there with some of the laws regarding penalties that are given for that, because there was a lot of chatter in the press box afterwards. Initially there was a suggestion that if the ball did deflect off of another part of the body onto the arm, it could be given as a penalty on the continent under UEFA rules, but not in England. But we then got it clarified later from some experts and Premier League referees that we spoke to that is the case, that penalty should not have been awarded last night. So good to hear that cleared up there, Tom, with that this morning. But I think for Newcastle fans, many of them still making their way home this morning on ferries and by boat heading back up the road to Newcastle from Dover. I think many of them, that will not help the way they feel this morning, because as I say, as I left the stadium last night, many of them saying that they were robbed or cheated, and you know, I think it's a very bitter pill to swallow. A match that they put everything into last night. They came seconds away from a famous win but it wasn't a goal that PSG deserved, really, in terms of the way it was awarded. Yes, they deserved it in terms of possession and chances. They could have scored a hatful last night. I think they had maybe 72% possession throughout the match as well, and an XG of more than 4 in every category. But it wasn't to be for Newcastle, and sadly, as Eddie Howe said there, that it felt like the pressure perhaps got to the VAR and the officials at the end. There had been a couple of penalty claims before that, and eventually it told.
Keith, at the moment, the Newcastle fans will be feeling frustrated, no doubt, but give it a few hours or even a couple of days. Let's remember that they do still have a real chance of qualifying. Just explain what they need to do.
Yeah, Tom, well, essentially, they need to better Paris Saint-Germain's result. Paris Saint-Germain, of course, go to Borussia Dortmund in the last game. Now, Dortmund are already qualified, so will that make things a bit easier for Paris? Some may say that will be the case. But listen, Dortmund obviously is a very, very hostile and difficult place to go. So I think what Newcastle need to do is they just need to make sure they win their last game at home against AC Milan, and hope that Dortmund takes something off Paris Saint-Germain in Germany. But they can also console themselves by the fact that even if they just get a point against AC Milan at home in that last match, it does keep the European dream alive, because that would consolidate them in third place in Group F, meaning that they would then drop into the Europa League, so they would have European football after Christmas. So I think the only thing that would work against Newcastle United were if they were to lose that game against AC Milan in a couple of weeks' time. But you've got to think they're going to feel aggrieved after that last night, and they'll want to do everything they can to make sure they get that victory to give them every possible chance of keeping going in the Champions League, or if not, as I say, dropping down into the Europa League and keeping European football going. But listen, they won't be feeling that this morning. It'll take them a couple of days to get over this one. And just speaking to Eddie Howe in the press conference afterwards, he said, look, it's really difficult to feel too angry. What I do feel is immense pride for the players, because he says the togetherness and the spirit in the small group of players we've got left, he said, is as good as I've seen at any club I've been at. I'm just going to step out a shot here, Tom, just at the end. You can probably see just over my shoulder there, outside the Parc des Princes, early morning here, some Christmas trees and baubles all arriving here with the festive season just around the corner. Well, some might say that PSG's early Christmas present came last night.
You've endeared yourself even more to the Newcastle fans with that one, Keith. Thank you.